So this is actually some housekeeping stuff. This presentation is actually on the internet. You can see that the URL for it is right here. It has a bit.ly link. You can pull it up on your phone if you want. It's responsive. There's other things in there, so you can see that there's a link to like a GitHub repo, my contact info, where you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I highly encourage you to do that. You know, not because I work for LinkedIn, but just because I found that I really enjoy connecting with people more on LinkedIn. It's sort of like a Twitter, but it gives you the ability to kind of talk a little more with people. So I've actually enjoyed, one of the things that I've enjoyed. At first I was like, do I really have to use LinkedIn? You know, same thing happened, I think, with me and Visual Studio Code. I'm like, I guess I should now go use Visual Studio Code, and then I like really fell in love with it. Also, this is my GitHub account, and you can follow me just about in any social media network at Planet of the Web. I found that it's some name that hasn't been taken in every social media platform. So if you're like in Flickr and GitHub, I'm always like at Planet of the Web. Please don't take that. It's been really hard to keep it. Now. Right, so I also have a repo in GitHub, and you can see that link. Then there's also like a link to all my courses. This is a persistence sort of bar that appears on every slide, so if you don't get it, you can write it later. Okay, really easy stuff for this presentation. If you have pulled it up, you can use the arrows to navigate to the next and previous slide. If you hit the M key, you can get sort of a list of the sort of the slides. And you can actually switch to different slides over here. And I'll be talking about this sort of presentation framework in my second session today, which will be hopefully more of a work presentation. Hopefully you guys bring your laptops and I'll kind of show you how it works. And you can play around with it. It's really cool. So also if you hit escape, you'll see sort of an not that escape. If you hit escape, you'll see this overview, so you can also switch to the slides like this a little bit quicker. And then the question mark brings up the help as well. So, having said all that, my topic today is called the Next 50. I've been at Lynda and LinkedIn Learning for about 6 years, and so I have a little bit over 50 courses. I think it's 53 right now. It depends on the day of the week. Things go up and down. So I've done about 12 courses per year. That means that I do one course a month, which is a really pretty good clip. Like, it's a really good pace. So I've learned so much from having done that many things. You know, after the first 10. I remember the first time I actually went to Lynda, and I did my first course. Actually, it was my second course, but it was my first course as an employee of the company. And I remember that, I didn't know this at the time, but the barista that I worked with, it was like his first course. And it was like my first course. And I was trying things out that I totally wouldn't do today. But he didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. I'm like, is this okay? He was like, yeah, sure. I'm like, okay, let's go for it. So don't watch that course, please. All my courses are right here at this link. If you want to go look at it, scroll down all the way to the bottom. It's ridiculous. So anyways, so this is about what I learned, about my process, what I think really works well, having done 50, 60 really courses. And hopefully this is about specifically online training and the stuff that I have done. I would say don't assume that what I do is what everybody does. We all have a slightly different process, and I'll talk a little bit about my point of view when I'm teaching courses. So I think when people watch you at something like lynda.com, part of the reason they look for your courses is because of your personality and kind of what you bring as an individual. So I don't feel like I'm telling you this is the way all the courses are done, because it's not. Okay. New version. Oh, wow. So this is just a web page too, so you can select things also as well. All right, so a little bit about myself. I'm a senior staff author / instructor. Sometimes I started out as an author, and then they switched the title to instructor. So sometimes I'll say I'm a staff author, sometimes I'll say I'm a staff instructor. And I work for lynda.com. You guys probably know Lynda. Recently we got purchased by LinkedIn, and so we started out this sort of version of Lynda called LinkedIn Learning. It's essentially lynda.com content within the LinkedIn platform. It's the same content. The sites right now, there's not a lot of difference in the way that they work. They pretty much have the same content. I would say that LinkedIn is kind of falling a little bit behind just because LinkedIn has been around and you know, there's a little bit of catch-up in terms of functionality, but I think that's going to change pretty quickly. We're kind of focused on bringing the platform to the same level as Lynda. There's very few things that are different. And then one of the great things about LinkedIn is that it's a bona fide, legit, like, social media platform. And I was just talking to somebody who mentioned that Lynda, the lady who started lynda.com, didn't really sort of go for social networks. And so, you know, I think we grabbed essentially your email and your name, and that's all the social media sort of, you know, sharing that we did. And so having a really good social media platform is going to be fantastic, and what we can do with LinkedIn. So yeah, they're pretty much identical, and those are also, these are links, so you can actually click on those if you're on the slides. I have 53 courses in the library. It depends on how you count them. So I've learned a lot from doing that many, and hopefully I'll show you some of the stuff that I've learned. And I primarily sort of reside in the front-end full-stack development course. So I teach on things like AngularJS, React. I do the Bootstrap Essential Training courses. I really love Bootstrap, so I'm a big fan. Let's see, other kinds of stuff, but primarily full-stack and front-end development, a lot of JavaScript stuff. So I wanted to share with you this story because we all have kind of successes that we really sort of appreciate in our careers as educators. You probably have met, somebody has emailed you telling you, you know, sort of the difference that you've made. So I wanted to share this one with you because I recently got this from one of our, you know, sort of customers, and it really means a lot to me. This is really why I teach. If you do any courses for Lynda or LinkedIn, you'll know that when we do our courses, I'm essentially like in a dark room by myself. There's nobody with me. So this is something that I try to remember when I'm building courses, that it's really about you having the opportunity of kind of changing somebody's life, giving them the tools necessary to improve their career, you know, to be able to maybe support their family. Those are things that are really meaningful to me. Having been a career switcher, I started out as a graphic designer, like working at a print shop. And that's actually really common. I was talking to Chris Coyer on an interview the other day. I don't know if you know, like CSS Strix, CodePen. And he was saying that he started in the same way. And I know that James Williamson also started as a career switcher. So it means a lot to me when I can make a difference. And that's really what this is about. You know, how do we create something that makes an impact and gives somebody the ability of improving themselves? So this is really cool. A little bit about how I got into teaching and training. I started out, if I can trace back sort of my teaching career, I started out by quitting something. I don't know if you can tell by my fantastic physique, but I really loved basketball growing up. And you can probably tell that I wasn't going to be a great basketball player in high school. So when I was in high school, I was like always benched, like, you know, I don't have any height. So I had a few problems. I'm not that tall. I can't really shoot. My only redeeming quality is that I was very fast, so I can get to the other end of the court really quick. But in 12th grade, I realized there's no future for me in basketball. I don't think I'm going to make it even in college. So I quit the basketball team and I started working as a lab assistant. Which was really rewarding because I discovered that I really enjoyed just helping people, you know, and I also discovered that by helping others, I was able to often teach myself new things. And it became easier to absorb concepts by sharing them with others. So I actually did that my whole life. As I got into, so I originally I have a BA in journalism, but even as I was going through that, I worked as a lab aide in school, in college, when I started out working to make extra money, I always did sort of training on the side, and eventually it became my career. So I've been an adjunct at a community college for about 15 years, and I really enjoy that. I do that to this day because I think that for the same reasons that I enjoy hearing from people, sometimes when you are teaching an online course, it's really difficult to get feedback from people, especially like as you record it. So I really enjoy being able to sort of go into a classroom and share with real 3D human beings, like actual, flesh and bone humans. So that's really cool, and I've been doing that for a long time. And I started out doing online training as a way of just helping my students out. If you guys have ever done this or used some lynda.com courses, you know that when you're in a classroom, you can explain something, and my process was I would explain something, and then I would kind of explain it again, and I would kind of go around the room, and I would notice that people were stuck on what I was explaining, so I would have to spend a lot of time kind of getting people caught up to where I was. And so I realized, well, if I could just sort of record myself, this is before Lynda, and let them, explain it once, let them watch it, absorb it at their own pace, so that they're not concerned about keeping up with, how fast I'm going, and I have to watch my pace as much. So that ended up being a fantastic thing. And I think it prepared me for Lynda. By the time I applied for Lynda, I already had lots of coursework already done, and that's one of the things that they really like to see. Do you have any online training, any kind of video training that you've done? Which, by the way, we have 2 content managers here. Peggy, of course, you've already met, and Simon St. Laurent, who is my boss, is here as well. He works at MySpace. So if you're interested about teaching for Lynda, those are 2 people you want to sort of slide a card to, be really nice to. It's a fantastic experience. I enjoyed it so much that it became my full-time job. So, and then I got a job with Lynda, and I've been there for 6 years now. So, all right, so one of the things that I always like to remember is this cartoon panel, because training is not for your benefit. You always have to think about it for being the student's benefit. And I go to so many places where I see people teaching that forget this basic fact that when you're teaching somebody, the purpose of that is really to get somebody to understand a concept. I see sometimes a lot of people who perhaps show you how intelligent they are when they're presenting, or show you lots of really cool technical things, but they're not really concerned about what is the learning goal of this thing that I'm passing on. You sort of have to have think of it as lost. You have to have a sort of plan for the video or the episode, and then kind of an overarching plan for the entire course. We want to have course level goals as well as a goal for the entire course. And every video should be about, it's for the cat. What does the cat want? Do they want petting? Do they want food? It's for the benefit of the student. And so think about how is this thing that I'm doing benefiting the student. The course development process for us goes something like this. I don't know if you recognize this, but this is from Battlestar Galactica. One of the first, I think it's the first episode that was not the pilot. It was called 33. And I told you I do 12 courses a year. So doing a coursework is like you write, prepare, do a proposal, and then you record the course, and then you've got another 33 minutes. So in the Battlestar Galactica episode, the Cylons attacked every 33 minutes. So after they got attacked, they would get kind of a little break, analyze what they wanted to be doing, and then they would have to prepare for the attack. So kind of a little bit like this. So for me, it all starts with a proposal. Even though I'm a staff author, I still have to write a proposal, and I still have to convince people, mainly Simon here, and he actually has to convince other people. So this is actually how all courses get accepted. If you're interested in doing a course, the first thing you do is you write a proposal. And in the proposal, you write down things like what I'm telling you, what is the learning goal of this course, when you write out an outline, what is this course going to contain. The outline's a little kind of, you're usually doing that months before you record the course, so it doesn't have to be exact, but it gives people an idea of, what you're going to be doing, and it also helps sell, the content managers on the concept. They get to figure out, whether they think this is a great idea. So it's kind of almost like a sales kind of project. You get excited about an idea or perhaps a framework, and they have to convince one person that this is the most fantastic thing and that everybody needs to know this and it has to be in the library. And then they have to actually present it to another bigger group of people, and they have to convince them that you're awesome if you're not a staff author, because they assume that you're good if you're a staff author, you're already there. You have to convince them that you're awesome, you're the perfect person, you're qualified, and this idea is fantastic, and we need to have it in the library. So the proposal is a little bit easier for me because I don't have to go through some of that, but I still have to get Simon excited so that he wants to do this thing that's going to live in our library. So that's kind of the first step. The proposal has, what technologies are we going to be using, what equipment do you need, and that kind of stuff. Then after that, you create the outline. The outline is that sort of, this is actually, I wrote a book a long time ago, and this is actually the exact same process for writing a book. You write a proposal, and then you actually submit an outline of what you want to do. And I think it's because Linda came from book writing, right? The lady Linda came from book writing. So you create an outline of what you're going to be teaching, and then after that, you prepare the assets. So for me, preparing the assets means I build the app that I'm going to be building in the course. So there's a couple of different types of courses. There's a more conceptual course that's perhaps how do you become a web developer, and that's what we call like a live action course. And in those courses, you're essentially just talking about something. And then there is the reference type courses. So I do Bootstrap Essential Training. I don't assume that people are going to watch that in sequence. It's like 5 hours long. And so they'll just jump into like how to work with the grid or something, or how to work with tables, and they watch that video by itself. And then there is the project-based kind of course, which is kind of my bread and butter, which is, we're going to be building this thing, and let me show you how to build it, and you kind of go through the process. So the assets are the thing that I build. That's probably what takes me the longest. First, because it's kind of difficult to build an actual app that works and that doesn't crash and that doesn't have any errors, that you're using like good solid code. It's just then difficult to actually write all the scripts. So a lot of your time, I would say 80 to 90% of my time is actually spent writing as opposed to recording. You will write a script that takes you an entire day to write, and then you go record it and it's like 15 minutes, and you're like, what? I just spent all day writing this thing that took me 15 minutes to actually record it. And so, gotta be prepared for that, because it's not about the performance, it's about the coursework. So that part takes me the longest to prepare the thing that I'm doing. Another thing that I do is make sure that what I'm building is as small as it needs to be. So I'll talk about that in a minute, but I don't like to see courses about, I don't know, say you're building a mobile app, but let me show you about this fantastic database, SQL database thing, and let me show you about how you do left joins. I try to really keep it tight and focused because I always think, what is this really about? Is this course about writing a database? Is this course about authentication? Is this course about CSS, SAS? No, this course is about building a registration system in AngularJS. So make sure that what you're teaching is only that. So I'll talk about that in a minute. So assets take a long time. Scripts, I kind of do them because I'm a staff author, kind of as I go. So it's a little bit of a different process. Usually, if you'll record something, you'll be scheduled like for a week or a few days out in California. And you'll have to do all this in advance. So you'll have to write all your scripts out in advance. And then I actually record the course, which is shockingly the thing that takes the least amount of time. Also, there's a lot of like scope creep that I have to watch out for when I'm preparing a project. You've done this, like you create something and you're like, wouldn't it be so much cooler if I add this little tiny, I'm sure it's gonna take me 3 lines of code, and then 2 days later you're like, why did I do this? They don't need to know this. So scope creep, something you definitely have to watch out for. Right, so you probably have heard this quote from Mark Twain. I could have wrote you a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. So in course development, you have to think about editing everything, not just the script itself. And I write the script and then I rewrite it. This is what takes me a whole day sometimes. And then when I'm performing it, I realize that what I wrote just doesn't sound good, or it doesn't sound good coming from me, or my Spanish accent gets in the way of me saying certain words, like a really bad one used to be inconspicuous. I have to use 20% more of my brain when I say that word. So there's some words that you're just gonna get stuck on. So do like Porky Pig, if you got stuck on something, you just kind of say it a different way, that's fine. I totally rewrite my scripts as I'm performing them. And that's, if you do a course, don't be afraid of that. Just rewrite them on the fly. But it's also editing the code, making sure that you don't have any extraneous code that you're teaching about, you know what you're teaching about, and that you're focusing only on the thing that you're teaching, right? So it's more than just editing the text itself. All right, so successful editing, each video or piece of code that I'm typing in this lesson needs to be, for me, a single complete thought. So you should try to make your videos really short. Our goal is 5 minutes. When I'm hand coding, 5 minutes is very tight. So I usually try to do like maybe 1 or 2 minutes of slides or some sort of, something like this that kind of explains the concept, graphics if I need to. And then I do some hand coding. 5 minutes is tight when you're typing everything in. So I would say no more than like 50 minutes if you're hard coding. And then make sure that you have a goal. You're not going to go off the subject. The number one reason I have to re-record something is because I wrote something, but I get really creative and I'll start talking about other things, and I'm like, why am I doing this? I wrote this, and it was great when I wrote it. So stick to like the plan for the most part, but make sure that each video is a single complete thought. I would say if you're doing a concept-based course, like how do you become a web developer, you'll find that 5 minutes is way too much time. Nobody wants to listen to you for more than a few minutes. So they actually tell you like 2 to 3 minutes, maybe like you go up to 5, but 5 is getting, people are gonna doze off, check their phone. So concepts, and then 5 to 15 minutes, I would say, for doing code level stuff. This is really big for me. Like, sometimes you forget what you already know, and so it's really hard for you to remember what it was like when you learned this for the first time. So for example, in Angular, Angular 1 at least, one of the big concepts is like MVC. It's an MVC framework. And so you'll often hear a presentation, people, oh yeah, it's MVC. Well, if somebody doesn't know what MVC is, then that means nothing to them. So if you use an acronym, make sure that you define it, and you can guarantee that people are going to watch your videos in sequence all the time. So try to define them every time. If you think it's getting super boring, then maybe in the later videos you can assume that they've watched them, especially if it's a project-based course. So for example, another thing that I do is when I say something I'll say, well, MVC is a model view architecture. I'll say something like the model is the data, the view is it's like a template. Because people understand like what data is, but they don't know what an MVC sort of architecture is. They don't know that the model is the data that use the template, and the JavaScript is the thing, the controller is the thing that kind of combines the two. So try to explain things. It's much better that way. And remember what it was like when you learned it. Remember what things kind of made you have to research, like all these pieces of jargon and stuff like that. So really important. I don't know if you can tell I'm a little bit into Battlestar Galactica. One of the things that is Battlestar Galactica at the very beginning, they would say they were created by humans, they rebelled, blah, 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 they have a plan. They always said that. I always loved that. Come to find out, the plan was kill all humans. It's a simple plan. It worked pretty well for them for a while. But they do have a plan, so just make sure the most important thing about editing is make sure you have a plan for the video, for how you're going to be saying things. That's why pre-writing the script is so important, because it gives you kind of a goal, but make sure that you have sort of broke it down into the smallest sort of concepts that you can. So common problems that I see, a lot of times I'll see presentations that are about, look at this cool thing that I did, or look how much I know about this concept. So make sure that it's not about you, it's about the cat. So think about how am I benefiting somebody? What is my goal for somebody who doesn't know this to get out of when they watch me? So what is somebody else getting? And assume that they are all over the place. Like assume that you have some people that are super smart, they've already done this. I don't know if you've ever gotten this, but I've watched presentations where I know I have worked with the framework that this person is using, I have done this code, but I still don't understand what they're doing. So make sure that you're really thinking about somebody who maybe doesn't know, or even somebody that knows, like make sure that you're explaining it kind of in the simplest manner. A lot of people try to cover too much, and this is where the editing of the scripts and your concepts come in. Make sure that you are doing single thoughts on every video. Then there's like a chapter plan. You have a chapter, so that chapter has to be about something. Make sure that you're moving towards it. Don't try to cover too much. And another mistake that I see is we have a huge library, something like 10,000 courses. So do you really need to do a course on SQL left joins in your course about, creating a connection to, I don't know, whatever, authentication? Well, maybe you do in that particular case, but make sure that you don't, if there's material covered somewhere else, just say, hey, here's the prerequisites for the course, go watch those. I'm assuming that you already know this, and then just get going. That way your course doesn't end up being, we used to have courses that used to be like 12 hours long. And we found that people do not watch that 12th hour. You can guarantee that nobody watched that. Or like the 11th hour, 10th hour, nobody gets through that. Our typical target for courses is about 2 hours. So it doesn't have to be a book. When you're writing a book, you really want to, those things are really big. Even for something like Bootstrap Essential Training, which has to be comprehensive, it has to, I think, cover every feature of the platform. It doesn't necessarily have to cover everything in every feature. You can say, okay, I'm going to show you how to solve a problem with, say, tables. Okay, here's all the classes for the tables. If you want to learn more, go check out the documentation. It's really easy. But you don't have to cover like what you would do if you write a book. And don't cover stuff that's already in another course. And then have bad sort of courses or presentations. They don't really have learning goals for everything. And they also, a lot, like I mentioned, they just explain jargon with other jargon, which is the worst thing you can do because nobody understood you the first time. The second time is like even worse. Like if I said MVC and then no, that's a model view controller. Somebody that doesn't know what that is, are still going to go, well, the explanation of the jargon with other jargon is completely useless. All right, so another thing that I'm really big on is this culinary point of view. So one of my biggest mistakes when I came into Lynda was trying to be like some of the other authors that I really enjoyed. So if you watch a course, for example, from Peggy, somebody mentions really high energy. I am not Peggy. I don't drink that much coffee. I don't know what it is, Peg, in the morning. There's a lot of people who I really enjoyed. I don't know if you've heard like James Williamson. He has like this deep radio voice. And I really wish I could sound like him, but I can't sound like him. James can talk about a comment in his HTML code for like 2 minutes, and it's completely interesting. That's not me. I gotta get into things right away. So I have a different point of view. I think the person that I try to be most like sometimes is David Gassner. He is so friendly. He's a professional actor, so his delivery is fantastic, and you're like, I want to be his friend when you're listening to him. But that's not me. So I mean, the reason I have this up is this is a Food Network show called Food Network Star, and one of the things that they always so they're trying to get a person to become a Food Network star in this reality series. One of the things that they always tell them is, what's your culinary point of view? Why should somebody want to watch you? What audience are you reaching? So for example, Bobby Flay is known for his like bold flavors and Southwestern cooking. Giada De Laurentiis is like modern Italian food. And Alton Brown is like the food nerd. He knows everything about every type of food. And so they really have different personalities and different points of view. And in the same way, you need to think about what do you like? You don't have to try to do a course like everybody else. Find out what your niche is and then do that, because what will happen is people will come watch a course from you, really enjoy it or hate it, and then go watch somebody else. But then they'll come back because, wow, I really like your teaching style. Sometimes some people prefer, like a college professor. So Simon Allardyce is really good at this. He's a good college professor, and he's really good at explaining concepts. So some people really enjoy that type of course, and they'll go watch that. Other people want to do a project-based course. Other people, I don't know, they just want kind of a great experience, for somebody to kind of really teach them the basics very well. So make sure that you think about that. What's my point of view? So here's my point of view. I love to teach with very practical examples. Oftentimes, as an instructor, you do this, like you go, here's how you do a hello world, and people will say, why should I use that? Like, I don't see the application of this feature, so then you'll have to explain actually how you would use that. So my courses tend to be, even if I'm teaching you about a table, I'll have real data from a table, and like say that I'm teaching you how to build a like table styles in Bootstrap. And then I'll talk about how you would use that and what instances do you use those different things. So practical, real world type applications, my apps, I try to make them as real world as I can. The only time that I pull back is if I'm being repetitive about a specific kind of feature, so I don't like to cover the same concept in 3 or 4 or 5 different movies, because I already showed you how to connect to the database. So don't cover that, and if I build another page where I need to make that database connection, I don't need to explain that again. So I just kind of skip it, you know, and I'll mention, hey, go watch that movie for how to connect. I have the code already here. So real world applications, I really enjoy doing project-based, although I do other things as well. And I try to be as clear as possible. My kids call it my teaching voice, which I'm using right now. Spanish people, at least me in my house, we tend to speak very loud and very fast. And so I use I always say that I use like 10% of my brain to slow myself and make sure that I'm enunciating. But it's also clarity of thought, making sure that I'm just being as clear as I possibly can, thinking about, am I using any words that somebody's not going to understand, and try to be clear. So that's sort of my personal point of view. It's not everybody's, but that's me. So I think of myself as the Gene Hackman of course development. So some of you guys are way too young to know who this is. But Gene Hackman is a 2-time Academy Award winner. He tends to do kind of working class characters, very honest and hardworking. He doesn't do like leading man type movies, but he is so good at what he does. He's retired actually from acting now. So that's kind of, you know, my, you know, point of view encapsulated in the type of person that I want to be as a teacher. All right, so some of the things you can do to edit yourself, especially like in courses, I try to think of, so one of the things that I learned from Linda was to think, like always, I remember I'm in a room by myself, it's like dark, there's nobody around me, so I try to think about, pretend like I'm talking to a friend of mine and I'm showing them this really cool thing that I love, but this person doesn't understand, and so I try to place myself in that sort of frame of thought before I begin a course, and I try to remember to smile. This is supposed to be fun, and you're supposed to be engaging. So just remembering to smile reminds me that this is something that is going to be good. Also, if you're doing live action, remember that you have to exaggerate a little more when you're doing live action, even more than when you're presenting. Like the directors will tell you, hey, we need a lot more energy. So it's a different frame of thought. You have to like double smile, and then remember to smile at the end actually, I don't know if I have that, yeah. Live action, so remember to smile at the beginning and then smile at the end, because I feel like when I'm explaining a concept, I get really serious in the middle, and if I don't remember, this is fun, somebody's going to have fun watching this, then I don't smile. So pretend like you're helping somebody that you know that you really like. You're helping a friend learn something that they don't know. What would you say to them? What things would you explain? That kind of stuff. And then, you know, doing presentations, recording, after doing 50, 60 courses, every time you do it, you're going to get a little better. You know, every time you get up here and talk to people, it's easier. You don't get a knot in your stomach. I'm actually an introvert, you know, so this is hard for me to get up here. But the more you do it, the easier it is, and it helps when there's a lot of people. All right, so I don't know how much time I have, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the tools that I use, and actually preparing like the technical kind of tools that I use, and some of the methodology. So writing the course, I write my course in Markdown, which some of you have heard in the last couple of days. It's just a text format with a few little pieces of formatting that you add, and it converts into multiple formats. I do my slides with Reveal.js. This is a Reveal.js presentation, so this is an HTML page. You can write it out, write your slides out in Markdown, and this is what my workshop this afternoon is going to be about. I use Dropbox for syncing. I often read from an iPad, so when I'm recording, I have like a little iPad in front of me and my keyboard and my mouse. and I'm reading my scripts from an iPad. So everything needs to be synced. If I edit my, if I edit my script, which I often do while I'm performing, then I need it. If I edit it on my iPad, I need to make sure that it updates everywhere else. So that's what I use. If you're writing a Markdown, the nice thing is that the syncing is, the file is so little that it syncs immediately in Dropbox, which is, I used to use all kinds of other stuff. So. And then I use GitHub a lot for managing how I create the courses. Okay, so this afternoon I'll be talking about this sort of subversion of Reveal.js that I built. So I've added things like this slide out menu that allows you to switch to other files or switch to other themes. And that's actually just a plugin, but I added it, built it into the network. So as you can see also, Reveal.js by default shows you all the bullet points, and I hate that because people will start reading like forward ahead of your presentation. So I made it by default to fragments, which is what this is, the sort of dot by dot. The other thing is the Reveal.js, like if you look at the examples, you kind of use HTML to write the presentation. I just want to focus on what I'm presenting, so I'm using Markdown for everything. And it, by default, will have syntax highlighting, so the color coding on the code is on by default, and the code is actually also editable, and we'll see it later on. You can also embed things like code pens, video, YouTube videos, whatever you want within the presentation, so that's pretty cool. And it's also easier to publish. One thing that I don't like about Reveal.js is that in order to sort of publish the course so that you can drop it into a folder, like in your FTP server, you have to actually perform like a terminal command. The stuff is kind of, like the file structure is a little bit messy. So I have a much simpler file structure for my version, and what a great name, Reveal. I mean, sounds like a piece of beef or something. So, all right, so Git and GitHub. So I did a course, and you can click on it if you want to, and it ended up, the files for the course ended up being about 2.5 gigabytes of a download. So we have these things called exercise files with every course that we release, and you can download them, and then you can do the content from the course, essentially, with it. So I created a course that was 2 gigs to download, and people started complaining. It's taking me, half an hour, 2 hours to download this course. Why did you make it so big? Well, if you're working with JavaScript and frameworks, you know that JavaScript generates, Node.js is a folder called Node Modules, and that folder is essentially a list of the plugins that you're using for that course, but every one of those subfolders also has its own dependencies, and so you end up with this great, like literally hundreds of thousands of files. At the time that I did this course, I remember Windows couldn't even handle that many open files. So if somebody was using an older version of Windows, the thing would crash, and I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore. So Git allows me to, allows me to not have to use the exercise files, Node modules, I'm sorry. It allows me to not have exercise files and just use GitHub for releasing the course. And it doesn't upload the Node modules folder, which make things a little bit easier. So if you don't know Git, think of it like this. It's exactly like Star Trek. So when in 2387, when Romulus was destroyed, Romulus was destroyed, and then Spock and Nero go back in time, and they created like a new version of the timeline. If you don't know what I'm talking about, maybe if you read comic books, I define it as a time machine multiverse. So you can essentially create versions of your course that are separate, and you can go back in time once you sort of record the state of the course. You can actually use it for anything. So it's sort of like the way that Final Cut works if you're into video. It doesn't store a copy of the video. It just stores the changes and your edits. So it's kind of like that. But if you're into Star Trek, this makes sense, right, hopefully. All right, so this is kind of how I create my projects. I start out, I told you that for project-based things, I start out with a final version of the project. And then what I actually do is I think about, okay, so here's the thing. I'm done building it. This is what I'm going to teach in this course. If I was teaching somebody how to do this, what would it look like when they first get started? What should be the very first concept that I teach? It's usually something like a hello world, but I never use that. I always try to make it have assets from the application, final application. And so then I create a start version, I record that video, and then I go, okay, now that I've done this, what's the next step? Like I'm moving towards this target one by one. And I think about, okay, if I was this person, what would I want to know next? What's the next thing that I can teach that's a single concept that will get them move further, that they'll learn something new, but it's moving towards this target. And the reason you see like a 1 or 2B, like a 1 would be the chapter name, so it'll be chapter 1, second video, and then B would be what did the code look like at the beginning and what did the code look like at the end. So I'll create branches in GitHub, if you're familiar with GitHub, for each one of those states. So somebody can download my GitHub repo for a course, and then they can just issue a command that takes the entire folder to how it looked like when I did it on that video at the beginning, and then they can maybe try out their code, try to do what I do in the video, and then you can run what's called a diff, which will show you, okay, they typed this in, but they missed a comma here, and it'll show you what the difference is between what they typed and what I typed, and it's a really cool experience. So that's kind of how I do it. Target start, and then create start-in branches. Like I mentioned, the B and the E are the start and end branches. And you can take a look at the sample project. I'm probably running out of time, so GitHub benefits, it has fantastic stats. So once you publish a GitHub project, sorry? Oh, I have plenty of time. Awesome. Okay, then all right, so actually, I'll click on some stuff then. Good. All right, so GitHub has a fantastic set of stats for different projects. I don't know why I keep on getting this. So you can take a look at how many people looked at your code or looked at that GitHub repo over time, what things are more popular than others. That looks really awful. So you can see sort of what are people looking at, what are people kind of getting into in here, how many views does it have, unique visitors. So it gives you some stats. Everybody loves stats, right? We're all computer scientists, so we love data. It also has allows forking, so a lot of people will take a project that I've done and they'll just fork it, which means almost create a copy of it, and then they can modify it. Sometimes they use it as a starter project for something else. Sometimes they just use it to go through the course, and they can make it their own without affecting the original. So you make a copy, but it's always referenced back to the original. Also allows you to run diffs. So you can say, actually, I think I have an example when I click on this. So a diff looks like this in GitHub. Okay. So for example, you can say, when I first started the video, that's what the page looks like, and then here's the lines, and you can't really see it, but some of these are highlights. So this is essentially at the beginning of the video, and this is what I typed in the video. So actually, this is also how I write my scripts. I can take a look at what my target is for that video, and I can look at my start code, and then I can compare it, and I go, okay, these are the lines of code that I need to type in. And also, this allows them to compare what they typed with a target as well, which is pretty cool, pretty awesome. Okay, and then you can also publish websites through GitHub. So this slide isn't the actual GitHub version, but you can actually have GitHub host your slides, and it's free. And it can be part of the course. So one of the things that I'm doing recently, and one of the things that I plan on doing, is releasing my slides with the course so people can look at the code. And actually, if you look at this slideshow, maybe you've been taking notes, you'll notice that this course, with my unprivate connection here. Come on, you do it. All right, so this is the GitHub repo, and actually, what I think I was going to say when I started this presentation, I actually wrote down all my notes of what I'm thinking about for each bullet point. This is the same file that slide presentation is reading. It's just that all those extra comments are hidden, so you can actually use this as a way of publishing a document that people can refer back to. So here's the author notes for this slide with the user that I talked about, and you can kind of read my slides. And actually, when I'm recording a course, I literally read from those bullet points. So the slide will look just like what you saw, but my iPad will have this version of the notes, and I'll be reading from that version. So that instead of writing like scripts and doing slides are my scripts, and when I'm updating one, I'm updating the other one. It makes things simpler and easier to use. that way. Super easy to do with this Reveal.js. So don't worry if you miss something, you just go to the slide, the notes. Okay, so it looks like, unfortunately, I lost mine. There, I have that, I'm doing this one. And then also what's really cool is that people can do pull requests. A pull request is a note to the author of a repo that somebody would like to contribute a change to the code. So what happens is, as you know, with a lot of frameworks, they update all the time. So occasionally a framework will update or something will go out of date. And I'll actually get a user that will send me a pull request and say, hey, this line of code has changed, it needs to be like this. And you can go, fantastic, I'll just accept that pull request, and that user will actually have discovered a bug that I can push into my code to update. And a lot of times, like, it's so awesome when people find, especially when things update, that they can submit the change. Or if people are having a problem, they can also submit a pull request. Also can be sort of a request for help. And what's great is that a lot of times I don't get a chance to get to them right away. So somebody else that is a subscriber to that repo can actually contribute and say, yeah, I had that same problem. All you need to do is this. Fantastic. Makes my life easier. So other tools, let's see, that I use. I told you about diffing. This is a link to a diff tool that I use on my Mac. That's really awesome. That I really love. What is it called? I forgot now. So this is called Kaleidoscope. So this is my favorite diffing tool on Mac. I use Snagit for screenshots. Oh my gosh, it's so fantastic. It's the best screenshot app, I know. People often ask, like, actually I don't have it in here, but often ask, like, what do you use for recording? We use a couple of different things. I don't think any of them are particularly great. They like to have like raw video files, because I don't do my own editing. Somebody does the editing, which is very nice. They are so much better than I am. I often think when I listen to the courses, it's so funny because I'll start watching one of my courses and I go, that person sounds really great. What a smart individual they are. And it's because they've edited all my ums, and they've edited like the times that I've had to repeat myself and the times that I've rephrased I sound. And I will literally listen to my own course for hours, like thinking, that's so pleasant. And now, what's really funny is that you know how when you hear your own voice that is recorded, it sounds to you kind of strange. That no longer happens to me. I think of my actual voice that I hear in my ears as somebody else, and my real voice being the one on lynda.com, and I sound fantastic. They have, I mean, one of the things that they are really serious about is the audio. They have really expensive mics. They have, somebody that checks the audio levels at the beginning of every course. They send that person over to Florida to make sure that all the audio is flawless. It makes a big difference. So they're very awesome about quality. Yeah, I use, generally for organizing my courses, I like a Kanban process, which is like where you have the different sort of columns and you move something from one column to the other. So this is just another Kanban sort of tool. And I love mind mapping. So one of the big things, that's sort of hard at the beginning when you're building the outline is what should the first thing that I teach be? And in what order should I be teaching? So I know for me, when I was doing Bootstrap Essential Training for the documentation wasn't in the order that I would teach it. And so this mind map tool is essentially like a tool where you can kind of move things around visually. So good mind map tool makes that a lot easier because you can kind of play around with the order of things by clicking and dragging things. So that's a fantastic mind map tool that I love. So here's some courses where you can learn about some of the things that I've talked about. I have a course on Markdown, on specifically Git and GitHub that is it's like 2 hours. There's a fantastic 8-hour course on Git that I recommend if you've got 8 hours, or you can watch my 2-hour course and get 80% to 90% of what you need. So this is actually part of my Cylon plan to take over the world. I realized that, man, I want to teach this course, but every time I teach one of these courses, I have to have a section on how you use Git or setting up the process, like the gulp process, and I'm like, the heck with that. I'm just going to do a series of courses on Git and GitHub, on like NPM. I did a course on gulp, grunt, all those build tools. So now when I start a course, I'm like, hey, well, go watch this other thing. So this little 2-hour, 1.5-hour, 2-hour gig course is exactly like that. That way I don't have to do this again. So then I have a course on Reveal.js, which is this like thing, which I will be covering, like as I mentioned, in the workshop that we have later on. So this is all I have. Thank you very much for your time. And hopefully maybe I'll get some questions. And we've got fantastic content managers here. Come on, AMA, anyone?
Thank you, Ben.
Anything you guys want to know about living the high life as a Lily.com author?
One question.
Yeah. Yes.
Just curious, who make these courses? Is it mostly from people who are working a professional? Is it more IT people? Is it professors?
Yeah, so I think we have a variety. I think what matters is sort of that proposal writing workflow identifies that, first of all, the content that we want is the right content for the library. So when I applied for doing a lynda.com course, I actually applied 3 times. And I didn't get a call back until the 3rd time. And so I remember thinking, I'm doing something wrong because, you know, I'm so like proud of myself. I would be a fantastic teacher for these people. It reminds me of the story of like, you guys know who Mel Blanc is? The man of 1,000 voices who did like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, not Yogi Bear, Boo Boo Bear. He did like all like some of the Jetsons. I mean, he did like the most gifted artist, voice actor of all time, by far. He did so many voices, like when you listen to them, you don't believe that it's them. Well, he went to apply for a voice acting job at Universal, I think it was. No, I'm sorry, it was Warner Brothers. And he went and he said, oh, I can do a lot of voices, give me a chance, I'll show you what I can do. And they turned him down. They said, we don't need any voices right now. So he came back a couple of weeks later and applied and talked to the person again. They're like, oh, we don't need any voices. He went back every 2 weeks for 2 years. And finally they gave him a chance. And you know, this is the greatest person of all time. I mean, the fact that they didn't give him a chance, you know, I don't know, I think the guy didn't personally like, you know, this fellow, so, you know, I applied 3 times, so it's like, if you don't get in the first time, you guys are so lucky to have these 2 fantastic people here, because it's much, like, going cold turkey is much harder. You know, going to, like, essentially I went to the website and I filled out a form and I had this fantastic idea. I think one of my problems was the first 2 times I proposed something that I wanted to teach and I wasn't thinking about what's already in the library. Like, I was doing like a lot of flash games with the Tribune Network of newspapers. And so I did some proposals on that and I just wasn't getting any callbacks on it. So my 3rd proposal was, I looked at the library and I said, what do they not have that I can make sound super interesting that they will call? So forget about doing the actual course on this. I just want to propose something that they'll actually call me back on. And sure enough, they call me back. And the course that I proposed has nothing to do with what I actually recorded. Because once they talk to me, they're like, yeah, look, I can do this and I can do. So that's a good story. So first of all, anybody can do a course, but they have to be credible as a source. So you have to, you know, if somebody's going to watch a course, you know, somebody's going to go, well, who is this person? Like, do they know enough about this topic? So it could be a college professor, it could be an industry professional, which was my case at the time. It could be you know, somebody that from a startup, whatever. But then they also have to demonstrate that they can teach. So for me, as I mentioned, I was already teaching at community college. I had already written a book. I had already produced videos, so I had things to show them. I had lots of videos that I could say, hey, here's a link to something that I did. And so they really see that as easy for them if they can sort of tell that you're a good teacher. Because I think that's, you can, you know, right now, I'm essentially a professional learner that does courses on things. So I've been with the company 6 years, so I'm no longer somebody that just came from industry or somebody that's maybe teaching in school. I'm somebody who learns for a living and then teaches for a living. So I think if we can tell that that person understands how to, describe difficult concepts easily, do they really care about what they're teaching? What do they sound like? Are they clear? Then I think you could beat anybody. But one of the hurdles, and maybe these folks can say a little more about it, is making sure that you are demonstratively, a professional that knows that. Do you guys have anything to add? Yeah.
No, actually, Brad just asked me a question.
Sorry.
So, you got 50 under your belt. What are some of the new and exciting topics that you have in your content area going forward? What's exciting to you?
This is really weird because I've been teaching a lot of super technical content, Angular, React, etc., JavaScript, and I did a course that I thought, well, occasionally, we have kind of holes in the library, hey, we need somebody to teach a course on this, and I did a course on becoming a web developer. It's what we call a skills course. And I didn't think much of it. I wrote it, I was nervous. It's the first time, I'm not in camera very often. Really the second time, but the first time didn't really count. Because it was really horrible. But I was really nervous. I recorded the course, and then it was within the last 7 months of last year, it was the most viewed course for that year, out of everything in the library, even though it had only been there 7 months out of the 12 months. And I'm I think the LinkedIn audience helped, but then I realized there's a hunger for this type of content. And a lot of the emails that I get are now from people saying, thank you for doing that course. I really don't know kind of what I should know, where I should go, how much do you make? So I'm thinking about some courses related to that. So for example, I'm thinking about a course on negotiating salary, because it's something that I learned. I have a lot of kids. I have 8 kids. And back when I had 5 kids, I'm man, I really just need to make more money. And when I'm going to these interviews, I'm getting nickel and dime here. I have to learn. I hate confrontation. I am an introvert. This is not a fun thing. But I'm I gotta eat. I got lots of, you should see my grocery bill. It's ridiculous. So I'm I gotta learn how to do this. So I went and I read a book. I think maybe it was 3 or 4 kids, but anyways, I digress. I went and read a book. I learned how to do it. I did it, and I ended up making just a significantly more amount of money. And I negotiated 3 or 4 times. I doubled my salary in one negotiation. So I think that there's a need for that. I love doing technical courses. I love doing project-based courses. I'm doing something on Vue.js coming up. But I also think that there is a need for those, and I think that I have some experiences that I think would be helpful for
The
that.
coding interview course.
So what?
The coding interview course.
Yeah, I'm doing it. So I have a weekly series coming up, starting I think next week, where every couple of weeks we have, essentially, because of my point of view, every 2 weeks every week I'll have a problem that people ask about in interview situations, how do you know about closures, or what about ES6 arrow functions, that kind of stuff. And then what's really cool is I had this other idea that was, I've only interviewed a few people in my life. I don't have this vast, knowledge of interviewing, coders especially. And so why don't I include, as part of this series, interviews with people that have hired hundreds of people, that work at big companies, or maybe that they have had experience kind of managing their careers really well, like Chris Coyer is one of the people, the CodePen guy, if anybody knows that, was one of the people that I interviewed. And I said, and I talked to him about, well, how did you, I know he hasn't, he actually said something really interesting. He said, I haven't interviewed that many people. As a matter of fact, the only, the 6 people that I have in my company, I didn't interview any of them, and I'm that's really interesting. I've actually heard that a lot, that if you know somebody knows how to do the job, then do you really need to interview them? And so he talked about, I really, I know these people, I could see their code pens, I could see their code, what they've done, so what am I gonna ask them to do an interview? I essentially I told them, hey, we're working with Rails, is that cool? Here's how much I'm going to pay you. Is that good? And then he just hired them. So that is part of that course, but I'm thinking of actually extracting it and making it, because I talked to a guy from Comcast who's literally hired hundreds of developers. Another interview was with somebody from Groupon who understands like the kind of the interview process in Silicon Valley. He's gone through that. He's hired lots of developers. He knows what that's like. So I think, I'm planning on interviewing other people like that, and I think that could be a really good course. So that's some of the things that I'm interested in. Yes.
What's the most challenging aspect of your job?
I think in doing it's the 33, I think, like a month for a course isn't a ton of time. So I think the day that I finish a course, I play like a really big game of Civilization or Minecraft. Like I build this huge thing, because I just need to like develop in the course. It's almost like just running a marathon. Right after it, you're just like, it's so much work that you're kind of devastated. So you need a little bit of time to back, at least a couple of days. I always take a day off. I'm usually working through the weekends. Our time's really flexible, so that's good. But maybe I shouldn't say I take a day off to my boss. No, and I think that's the hardest thing, like the 33, like, okay, I'm done with this. What am I doing next? What am I going to be doing after? Because I plan out my courses a year in advance, actually. So I already kind of know what I'm going to be doing. I write the outlines maybe 3 or 4 months in advance, so that, okay, I've got maybe 2 weeks to train myself on some things that I need to be learning that I'm going to be teaching. And then I have to build the app, which always takes the longest, because it's really sad. I mean, you can't write an app with bugs in it, and people will send you like emails, hey, I noticed in this video that you used it. Why did you do that? And you're like, well, I've been really lucky that I'm pretty good about that. So I use a lot of testing tools and stuff like that. But that pacing, I think, is really difficult. What else is really hard? Building the app is challenging. Scope creep is really hard to. I really want to add that one little line of code that ends up being 2 days worth of debugging. That is just going to make this thing fantastic. And then this editing, I think, making sure that okay, am I doing anything in my plan that is something that I've already done? If I'm say building a 10-page website, or any of those pages things that I've already taught, or is it something different about this page? So although my apps are pretty realistic, I feel like every video has something that's unique and different, and that's actually probably the hard thing about building the app. It's not building the app, because you can build an app pretty easily, and it can be the most horrible code you ever saw, but then going back and going, okay, I gotta edit myself. That's kind of challenging.